Next, we're going to analyze accounts receivable in the context of inventory. Like you might say, how are they related? But that's why we started with the cash conversion cycle. Inventory, when we buy it, costs us some money, but we don't pay it. That's an accounts payable. Then we have to sell it, get some cash, and then we can pay our payables. First, the gross margin is, as we saw before, the higher the cost of goods sold, the lower your gross profit. There's a direct correlation between inventory and the income statement, specifically in cost of goods sold, which starts right at the top to arrive at gross profit. The cash conversion, last time when we did Mod 5, we looked at revenue and receivables, so we covered day sales outstanding. That generally means how long does it take us to collect from our customer. The next is we're looking at average days in inventory. How long does it take to sell inventory? And finally, days payable outstanding is how long do we wait to pay our vendors. Gross profit is, as mentioned, it is net sales minus cost of goods sold is gross profit. And these are the scenarios we saw earlier. Now, if we look at the gross profit, and let's say, for example, that it's declining, the gross profit margin is going down. That's less profit per dollar. So why might that happen? First is maybe the product is stale. So there's fewer people buying the product, or you may even have to cut price to get sales to happen. Next is new competitors entry, thereby putting more competitive pressure on sales and the prices, which again will take a toll on your profit margin. Third is maybe the economy is slow. When the economy is slow, less sales, people are more price conscious, prices drop. Fourth is maybe you're overstocked. You have too much in inventory and you need to get rid of it, so you cut the price to induce more people to buy. Next, your costs have gone up. If you are unable to pass those costs on to your customer, then your margins will drop. Let's say popcorn in a theater. If the cost of popcorn were to rise, the theater has a choice of either not passing it to the customers, charging the same per box of popcorn, in which case they make less money per box of popcorn, or do they increase the price and pass that cost increase to the customer. And last is product mix. What if you shift from higher profit products to lower profit products? Your revenues may be exactly the same, but you're selling kind of the wrong stuff. You're selling things that don't make you as much money. Days inventory outstanding, we've seen this before. You take average of inventory and divide it by COGS divided by 365. So in the book, it does this formula of 365 times the inventory on average divided by COGS. I prefer, even though it's maybe more cumbersome mathematically, it's more logical to me that average days in inventory is you take your average inventory and divide by how much inventory do you sell per day. And if you do that, then you have inventory divided by days, and you end up with how many days you have left in inventory. So either it's mathematically equivalent. I just find it easier to remember and to interpret using the method I just showed. When we probe into like what's happening and why, one thing we might notice is that inventory quality is hard to measure. Right? We can only see numbers of what's sold, not what's necessary in inventory. We're watching for things like, do you have to discount heavily in order to get people to buy? That shows that the quality or the differentiation is not very good. And also, there's a general strategy where we want to increase sales because when we sell more, we have more opportunities to have higher buying power, more production efficiencies, and therefore be able to lower our cost of manufacture. So those are related to numbers that don't always show up, is the quality dimension and also what impact it has on our cost structure and our overall manufacturing efficiency. Then asset utilization. Easy part is the lower the days, the harder your assets are working for you, right? Because you're turning it over quite often. We want to watch out for other considerations and perhaps ways to improve it. One is reduce the bottlenecks so things flow quickly, more quickly through. And if you could flow from raw material to manufacturing faster, then your days are going to drop and you're going to be more efficient. Second is just in time. Just in time is a general approach under the category of Japanese manufacturing techniques where everything is just in time. Your suppliers give you your raw material just in time. Your various stages of production arrive at the next stage just in time. So there's no stockpiling of buffer stock along the way. And the other is put in place demand pull. So there's demand pull, which means you don't manufacture until someone orders it, or the other is we build it and hope they will come, right? So demand pull by definition has you maintain lower inventory levels, and you wait for the demand to pull through so you can manufacture almost to order. The next is days payable outstanding. We've done this before, and it's simply a measure of how many days it takes you to pay your vendors. The formula in the book is 365 times the average accounts payable divided by COGS. The variant that I find more easy to understand is what is your average payable, and then divide that into how much you pay per day, and that result is how many days you have left to pay, the days that it takes you to pay your bills. We have to be careful here. One might think that, well, let's just make it as high as possible. But if you do so, then you're making more cash available to your company, but you may be harming your relationship with your vendors. If your vendors are under the understanding that you're paying them in 30 days and you think you're wise by not paying them for 90 days, that vendor will remember it. They'll remember it to when they next time quote you a price, or they next time consider whether to sell to you or somebody else. So be careful when you play with stretching beyond your terms. Cash conversion cycle, as we've seen before, is you take the two asset ones and you add them. You take the liability one and you subtract it. We add day sales outstanding plus days inventory outstanding, and you subtract payables outstanding, and you get cash conversion cycle, which is a measure in days. How many days does it take you to complete a whole cycle of getting inventory, selling inventory, collecting money, paying your bills? And the more turns you can make, the more efficient your business is. When we look at an example, Home Depot, we see this spread over the 2012 through 2016 timeframe. And we notice that the bottom line is they've gone from 51 to 39. That's a pretty dramatic increase in their efficiency. And how did they do it? We look at the components. Day sales outstanding doesn't look too different. Days inventory outstanding is a big deal, right? So they've dropped 10 days out of the inventory, so they're managing their inventory much more effectively now. And days payable is about the same. It's about 38, and like I mentioned, we don't want to really mess with our vendors. It seems prudent to look inside to improve and not take it out on your vendors. We can quantify what's the value of that improvement. They took the average inventory days down by 11.2 days. Their cash balance is computed by change in cash equals the change in days inventory outstanding, that is the 11.2, times the cost of goods sold per day. And that yields $1.7 billion. By having less inventory around, it's saving Home Depot cash of $1.8 billion that they could not borrow or they could redeploy to other uses. 11 days doesn't seem like a big deal, but in a big company with large receivables, it is a big deal.